Excellent. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to our July Climate Action Advisory Committee meeting. Really happy to see such great attendance and participation on this summer July warm day. So we'll start out with roll call introduction. So what I'm going to do is just read down the list of participants, and I'm also going to welcome our new members as I do that. So we have from Cloverdale, Jane, welcome. And let's see, from Katati, I see Judith Newton, and I don't think, is Carl with us? I don't see Carl on my screen. And then from Healdsburg, we have a new member, Tyra Benoit. Benoit, is that how you say your last name? And you go by Ty, is that correct? Welcome. And then we also have Marilyn Joyce, who I believe is here. And then from Petaluma, we have a new member. Welcome to Beverly Shore, who is here. And I don't think that Pete is with us yet. And then from Rohnert Park, we have Shirley Johnson, who is also a new member. Welcome, Shirley. And Julie Royce is our second new member. Is that Julie waving? Oh, your name says Glenn, so we'll know that you're Julie. Thanks so much for being here and welcome. And from Santa Rosa, we have Kevin Conway and Steve Bertelbaugh, both here. Sebastopol, we have Zeno and Stephen Pierce. I think they are both here. And then Sonoma, Matt Metzler and David Leland, welcome. The town of Windsor, our new member, Michelle Gervais, is on vacation, so she's not able to join us today. And I do not see Christopher, so no Christopher yet. Then County of Sonoma, we have Tom Conlon is with us today. Welcome, Tom. And from also County of Sonoma, Jake McKenzie, who is a new member. Welcome, Jake. And then lastly, also from the County of Sonoma, Julie Kawahara, and welcome, Julie, another new member. Really pleased to see you here. So that is our roll call for the day. Again, welcome all. And I did want to call your attention to one new item that you probably noted in your agenda packet, which is that based on direction from our board, we've been asked to include an attendance list or tracker. And so you'll see that included in this and future packets. And then the other thing I just wanted to note is that we are sending the meeting announcements out for the CAAC via MailChimp. And I heard from Drew that several members did not receive the packet, so our apologies for that, and would request that you add Drew via MailChimp to your safe sender list in email, because likely what happened is it went into your spam. That does happen occasionally with MailChimp. So please let us know if you have any issues with that. And Drew, are there any other logistical announcements that I have forgotten to mention here today?
No, I think that's it. Besides, if anyone has another email address that you would prefer I have on my distribution list, also let me know. But yeah, I think that's it, Tanya.
All right, thank you. Okay, and I know that we have quite a few members of the public here with us today, and so I'd just like to thank all of you for being here as well, and certainly your participation and inputs during the meeting are very welcome as we go through our agenda. So with that, I will open it up for any public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So if you do have something that you'd like to share with the committee, please go ahead and use the raise hand function in Zoom so that I make sure to recognize you and provide you an opportunity to speak. Right, and I do see in the chat that we have two folks, Woody Hastings and Moorkill. Welcome both. So if there's no public comments, then I will go ahead and move into the next item on our agenda, which is approval of the April 9th meeting notes. So I'll ask first if there are any additions or corrections from committee members. Yes, David.
Hi, I noticed just a misspelling of a word on page 6 in the second column, second full paragraph. It's relating Tom Conlon's comments, and the word ambitions shows up, and I think it should be ambitious.
Okay, make that correction. Thanks,
David.
Any other additions or corrections? I'm not seeing any. So with that, I will ask if there is unanimous consent to approve the minutes. If I could just see a show of hands.
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Okay. So Drew, I believe the minutes are approved. And I should have also said at the beginning, please bear with me as we go through this. Brant Arthur obviously is not here with us. He left to take a new role with Sonoma Clean Power, although he does stay in regular touch with us and we expect to continue working with him. But I'm new to facilitating this meeting, so welcome any feedback that all of you have as we go through the call today. So the next item on our agenda, item 4, is a report out from CAAC members. And what I'll do is I'll just read down our list of CAAC members and ask you to share updates on what's happening in your jurisdiction. And for our new members, we typically ask folks to limit their comments to 1 to 2 minutes. And I would ask our new members if you'd like to share just a little bit about your background and why you were interested in joining this committee, just so our a group can get to know you a little bit more. So with that, I will ask Jane from Cloverdale if you have any updates for us today.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think in the last meeting I reported out that Cloverdale was joining the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership, and that has happened. So we were able to take advantage of the drought drive up. Drought drop by event. And then of course, the city has also been moving forward on working on some of their infrastructure in the buildings, working with PG&E, actually also with the Energy and Sustainability Division. We connected them with some preliminary walkthroughs and then working with PG&E's Sustainable Solutions Turnkey program. So they are moving forward. We just had a public hearing I think at the last city council meeting regarding Government Code 4217 and getting the master services agreement to do about $4 million worth of projects, I think is what they're looking at, upgrade infrastructure for several of the city-owned properties in the city. So investment grade audits are moving forward, and then hopefully that work to be done over the next year. That's what I've got to report out.
Great, thank you, Jane. Next from Katati, Judith, any updates on your end?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to report that I realized a development was going in across the street from me, and so I got involved in that to try and influence the way it is happening here in downtown Katati. So getting it to be low impact and low car, mitigating the tree removal issues, and not including natural gas and things like that. And also I'll be reporting out to City Council on the results of the CAAC as we go forward.
Great, thank you, Judith. Let's see, then we have Healdsburg, Ty, and then Marilyn. Oh, and you're still on mute, Ty.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here joining this great group of people. And I'll let Marilyn do the official report. But my background is one that I've been in environmental and civil rights activism my entire life. I taught and was a dean at the JC. So I taught a lot about climate change and environmental issues. My thrust lately, the reason I'm in Healdsburg is because I did lose my house in the Tubbs fire. So that sort of defined my last few years trying to address some of the issues that have surfaced because of that. But again, I'll let Marilyn talk about what's been going on in Healdsburg because there is a lot that's been happening here. So thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn.
I was going to defer to Ty because he's been so plugged in. So, I mean, Healdsburg needs to step up, and we're online to have a representative come to the council meeting the first Monday in August. And there'll be a big mobilization of local people directed at water. And we hope to make it obvious that water and fire are all part of climate. I don't know what else to add. There's just so much going on right now, and
All right, well, thank you. Let's see, next from Petaluma, we have Beverly.
I'm new to this committee, obviously, and in my background, I just finished my, I termed out of our Parks and Rec Commission, where I served for 8 years and was liaison to various other committees and commissions. I have a strong interest in sequestration and outreach. I'm also a member of 350 Petaluma, so public outreach and involvement, education is very high on my list as well. So I'm pleased to be here, and I leave all the news about Petaluma to Pete.
All right, thank you and welcome. So Pete.
Welcome, Beverly. It's so nice to have another representative from Petaluma. Over the course of the last year or two, there have been other people appointed, but apparently not fully informed of their position on CAAC. Anyway, 1 minute recap. There is a lot going on in Petaluma with respect to our climate ambitions. We're not doing nearly enough, but at a recent city council meeting, city council reviewed and affirmed their list of goals and priorities for the coming year. There were a number of climate related policies and actions in amongst them. I didn't get the sense that climate was given highest priority or was being acknowledged as an emergency. Last night we had another meeting of our Climate Action Commission, and the two big things that they discussed were, one, how they would participate in the city's Climate Ready campaign, which is an effort to spread information and increase engagement among the wider community on issues of climate. And the other big thing that was discussed that is also right now a big topic in Petaluma is has made initial application to the Cool City Challenge. This is an effort of the Empowerment Institute to work with cities that have a climate action plan, that have embraced a 2030 target date for carbon neutrality. I guess it's for cities over 40,000 population. And the part of the draw is that 3 cities across the country, or maybe it's just California, will be selected for an award of $1 million spread out over 5 years. So that's one of the things that Petaluma hopes to do in order to help spread, to further its climate ambitions. I guess I'll leave it there. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Pete. So next we have Rohnert Park, and we have 2 new members from Rohnert Park, Julie and Shirley. So Julie, if you'd like to start, and then turn it over to Shirley. Welcome.
Hi. I really apologize. I couldn't change my name there. If any of the hosts can, please feel free. My name is Julie Royce, Royce, and I am just thrilled to be here and to have Shirley and I officially represent and bring Rohnert Park to the table. We are very ready and willing to listen and get involved here, and bring all of the ideas and goals and recommendations strongly back to our city. And they have, as many of you may know, declared that climate is a priority this year, and they have a lot of work to do, as we all do. And we hoped that through all of our communications and activism and education, that we can move forward as a city in Rohnert Park.
Thank you. Shirley.
Thank you, Tanya. Good to see you, Julie. I have a sister named Julie, and people were always calling me Julie. I always wanted that name, but anyway. I'm Shirley Johnson, and I'm I got my fingers in all kinds of climate pies, so I see a lot of my friends all over here. And I've been in Sonoma County a long time, graduate from Sonoma State. I'm tired of Petaluma taking all the thunder for climate action and stuff. So we're going to be competing with Petaluma. And one thing I'd like to bring up that we'd like to compete with is to oppose new gas stations. You know, I'm a member of CONGAS, that's Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations, and we're going to be, bringing that to the attention of Rohnert Park. That Petaluma has set the bar, and it's time for us to step up and meet our sister city in that direction. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shirley, and welcome. So now from Santa Rosa, we have Kevin and then Steve. Kevin. I think Kevin is here. Yep, there you are.
Thank you, Tanya. Hopefully I can be.
Well, Kevin, we're not hearing you.
Be heard. With the CONGAS issue on Monday, and I'm sure Woody, who's on the call here, will probably speak to that later. But I just want to say that it's been very disappointing that the meetings for the Climate Action Subcommittee in Santa Rosa have been canceled twice now due to lack of agenda items, which is a complete mystery to all of the activists that we're very much looking forward to those meetings and to making comments. The council has also been very reluctant to support the Climate Safe California effort that the Climate Center is putting on, which is again another mystery. So while there are some good things happening in Santa Rosa, recently it seems like there's a real lull happening, and we're going to have to try and think about how to address that. But that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, I've been focused recently on things that are going on at the state level. That includes both the Climate Action Plan for Transit Infrastructure at the California Transportation Commission and Caltrans level, and then the efforts by CARB. They are in the process of updating their scoping plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled. I've also been watching what's going on in other cities. A lot of cities developed slow streets plans during the pandemic, and some of them are keeping them going. There are lots of examples of things around the world that are going on. For example, just closing streets that are near schools reduces a lot of the traffic of people driving their kids to school. Kids tend to walk or bicycle if the streets around the school are closed. So we've got a lot to work on and a lot of examples out there of things that are working. And that's my report.
All right, thank you, Steve. So now we'll go to Sebastopol, Zeno, and Steve.
I don't have anything particular, and Steve probably has more to say, but I just have a reflection that I read through the material that was sent around about the CAAC and the authority. And I noticed, like, looking at our crowd, that we are kind of an aging group, right? From middle age to aging. And I'm listening in often to young people talking about climate, and they're very down on capitalism. And so their approach is almost parallel and not in communication with us. So I was wondering, since the statutes of this group and of the authority allow extra people to be invited in outside the director's suggestions, whether that is needed to make this effort like broader and community-wide. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve.
After 4 years of being on the CAAC, I wanted to say that today I'm filling in, and the city they're trying to find a new applicant, and hopefully that'll happen by the next meeting. If not, I'll fill in again. And as far as report out from the city, their water saving program, that is the RCPA program, the pay as you save, is off to a good start. There's quite a bit of interest in people using their audits from the pay as you save program, and then about half of those people are actually doing the upgrades on their system and having it added to their water utility bill. So that's an exciting new program that hopefully other cities will start to look at too. Sebastopol did just adopt a 25% mandatory water reduction after starting out the gate at a 10% voluntary. And then on our climate committee, things are still kind of off to a bit of a slow start. I think we're trying to get our feet under the ground and figure out priorities. It's mainly been in endorsing various state legislation that's put before the council. And also there is some movement to try to find funding sources, possibly through the utility users tax. Those efforts are just beginning. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for your long years of service to the CAAC. You will definitely be missed, and so just want to appreciate you and thank you for being here today. Let's see, next we have the city of Sonoma, so Matt and David.
Yeah, I just have one brief comment. We've had a very progressive city council in the city of Sonoma that's done really a lot of great things, appointing a sustainability coordinator. And I'm just curious if this has been going on in other jurisdictions. It just makes me think of what Zeno had to say about people, activists tending to be those of us of a graying generation. And we've had, in the last 10 months, we've had 4 unexpected vacancies on the Sonoma City Council. And they're having a hard time because of the fear of negative stuff on social media. People don't want to, a lot of the progressive people don't even want to serve on the city council. So that makes me worry about the future of our progressive, what we had, the progressive majority we had on the city council. I don't know if that's going to be sustained because of the vacancies, and now we're going to have a special election to fill one of them. So anyway, that's all I had to say.
All right, David, any updates from your perspective? Oh, and you're still on mute. There we go.
I don't have any updates today, thanks.
Thank you. So let's see, from the town of Windsor, Michelle is not here. And Christopher Peck is on the phone, but doesn't have any updates. And I'm not sure he's in a place where he can share with us. And Mitch, you are the previous rep from Windsor. So I don't know if you're here in that capacity today to provide an update, but I guess I'll ask if you do have anything you'd like to provide an update on. Oh, and you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work with the local, well, actually the national AIA, American Institute of Architects, to bring their COTE program, which is a pretty robust national program that the local chapter has been trying to ramp up, which has to do with environmental sustainability and progressive design, as it results in projects and land development ideas. And so it's a very interesting program. Being recognized through that program usually has a lot of cachet with it, both for the community and the professional community. So I mentioned last time that it might be an opportunity for members of the local chapter to come and present to this group, the benefits of this program. It's very interesting if you get acknowledged through that process, what it does for both future projects, but just, carrying the banner for climate action and environmental sustainability. So I'll keep working on that. They have a pretty interesting environmental subcommittee here locally and have a lot on their plate. So I'll keep chipping away at that. Now, is Michelle on this? Now, you're talking about Michelle Gervais?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
she has been
Well,
officially appointed. She just wasn't able to attend.
okay,
today's meeting.
good. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I should. She's my wife. So what did I say? But anyway, I will tell you this. She's in Missouri with our 2 kids at a camp. So, and they are now driving back. So that's about the best I can give you. I have my dog here in my office and I'm just behaving myself. So,
Great.
so
Well,
anyway, I'm glad to have served. And if I can keep this coat idea active, I will do that.
great. And thank you for your years of service on the committee. Really very much appreciate it. And thanks
All
for
right.
being here today. So now I'll move on to our representatives who are appointed by our members on the RCPA board, who are also from the Board of Supervisors. So Supervisor Gorin has Tom Connellan as her rep. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you for any updates.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here with everyone today. I'll just say that here in Sonoma Valley, we're learning to live with climate change. Our Climate Coalition, Sonoma Valley Climate Coalition, hosted our first in-person picnic to get together post-COVID, but we happened to coincide with the Dream Fire burning on the hillside just above the water tanks in Sonoma that night. And we decided to go ahead with it. It was a very strange feeling to be watching the fire burn really just a stone's throw from my house while meeting in the plaza and contemplating our future. The winds were blowing in the other direction. And the crews seemed to be on top of it. And also, wildfire in California has touched my family personally. My mom owns a parcel that just burned over in the lava fire up in Siskiyou County. And I would just say that working alongside of Sierra Club and other groups, the Air Resources Board, as Steve mentioned, is updating the scoping plan, 2022 scoping plan, and pleased to see comments from Pew Charitable Trust, Sierra Club, and Riverwatch are coming together, and we hope to make improving that critical document for California policy moving forward. I'm eager to see the Urban Land Institute process that this committee has been participating with and RCPA has been engaged in. Looking forward to those recommendations being really paid close attention to. And just would also add that Greta Thunberg has recently made some comments. I encourage everyone, I'll put a link in the chat, but she is speaking again, truth to power in letting us all know that we can't simply pretend. We can't act like we're working on climate action. We have to actually do it. And it's a message I think that's very timely. And in specific, I'll just mention that we've been looking into agricultural waste burning. I was surprised to see that the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District has actually taken a close look at agricultural burning. And I was surprised to learn that copper pollution in grapevines, for example, is quite significant and something we want to be paying attention to here in Sonoma County if combustion of that waste is allowed to continue. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So next, appointed by Supervisor Rabbit, we have our new member, Jake McKenzie. Welcome, Jake. One of our climate champions.
Well, I have an interesting welcome back to the public arena as a recovering elected official. I'll just make one editorial comment. If you run for office and are elected, you better have a bloody thick skin, is all I can say. But I have 24 years of thick skin accumulated. I'm also, as a founding member of the process that resulted in RCPA being created. I was its first chair. And so I have a longstanding interest in climate change. I was able to attend COP 14 and 15 in Poznan and Copenhagen as part of the California delegation. My current interests that you should be aware of is that I'm on the board of directors of Greenbelt Alliance and our new direction in climate resiliency. And we're in the process of hiring a director for wildfire management and climate resiliency, who will be the Sonoma County representative replacing Terry Shore. That process is ongoing next week. I also am active with Climate Center Action Group, and I'm also on the advisory board of Generation Housing. So I declare all these interests so that you are aware that I have not gone away. That being said, I'm trying to figure out what a District 2 representative should represent on this committee. I still have a very strong interest in what goes on in the city of Rohnert Park because I'm a citizen of that city. I'm very interested in the Climate Commission in Petaluma because I've already suggested to the city of Rohnert Park that they create one. So that being said, two things in Rohnert Park you should be aware of if you have not already been briefed. When the city adopted finally the emergency resolution on climate change in March of this year, as part of that resolution, they adopted the mitigation strategy of this agency. And in the resolution said that it was a priority to implement these strategies. So that's number one. Number two, when they did a quick workshop on the climate change element and the general plan update last week, the staff paper made no mention of the fact that there was a mobilization strategy with its, the strategies and implementation plans contained therein. So I was able to remind them in public session of that omission. But the good thing is that in the budget process this year, since as Julie Rice just said, climate change was one of 10 budget priorities facing the city council, and they, as I understand it, opted to add 1 FTE to staff an ongoing process, which hopefully will be reflected in a new climate change element in the general plan that's been prepared. So I have an optimistic view of what's going on in the city of Rohnert Park. And since I'm representing Supervisor Rabbit in District 2, then I need to be up to speed on what's going on in Cotati, any unincorporated activities, and obviously the city of Petaluma. So that's my report. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you for joining us. So last we have our two representatives appointed by Supervisor Hopkins. So we have new member, Julie. Welcome, Julie, and then Carrie. So Julie, I'll let you start.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or actually it's afternoon now. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm an organizational development consultant for public and nonprofit programs here in the county. I have a pretty extensive history in working in healthcare primarily, though I've dabbled in education and criminal justice and workforce development. My particular interest around climate solutions has been sort of this, I guess, convergence of my background in healthcare, in social and economic justice, as well as community engagement, education and engagement. I've worked a lot with a lot of marginalized communities, grassroots organizations, and so I feel like I was reading some of the background documents that were provided and really feel like I hope I can be of help in doing some of that community engagement in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So Carrie.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, there you are.
Great to see you, and I'm really excited that Julie and all other new faces are here. so exciting. My updates are kind of a bit programmatic, but working on in the Petaluma with the Petaluma Equitable Climate Action Coalition to help increase the number of kind of steps to civic engagement and helping folks who have traditionally been left out of policymaking decisions. Specifically, we've got folks representing Black, Latinx, and Asian American communities and doing education around our climate emergency framework so that they can help give input into that planning document. And we're hoping that this can be a model that can be used elsewhere to help increase civic engagement into kind of not just planning documents, but implementation of climate solutions and have more voices of color in that process. Also, as a board member of LoCien, and I know Julie works with LoCien as well, working to bring the topic of climate change into their programming and more into the conversations with their community, the Latino community. But I also recognize that this is already very top of mind for the Latino community and already of a very high concern. So more just bringing a conversation into what can we do about that, and holding a lot of humility around how do we talk about this and how do we talk about it in a way that's more inclusive, and checking assumptions and biases in that process. So that's a big priority, is kind of bridging different communities around climate solutions. I also wanted to kind of lift up that we have the Latino climate leaders group that came out of the MAP 1 funding, and they meet somewhat regularly. I believe Tanya and a few other folks participate, but curious how these two groups can collaborate. And also to the open appointment in Sebastopol, I know there's a number of really charging youth in the climate space in Sebastopol. So that's a suggestion for an appointment here, because I know there's some amazing youth doing some work there, and it would be cool to suggest them as an appointee.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you all. Did I miss any members of the committee? I think I got everyone. So it has been a practice of our group to also welcome public comment or updates in terms of things that are happening from members of the public. And so I would like to provide that opportunity now. But before I do that, I do want to introduce someone who's here with us, and she doesn't know I'm introducing her, but just so you know, Anna Yip is here with us, and she is the new climate resilience analyst. Did I get your title right, Anna? With the County of Sonoma. So she's part of the new team that the county is staffing up, and so really delighted to have you here, and welcome, and look forward to working with you going forward. So with that, if any members of the public would like to give a brief update, and in the interest of time, I'll ask that you keep it to a minute if you do have something to share with the group, and just use the raise hand feature in Zoom, please, because I can't see everyone on the screen. I don't see any hands raised. So I think with that, I will move us on to our next agenda item, which is an update on the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy. So I'm going to share a slightly modified version of the update that I provided to our board back in mid-June. And let's see, Drew, I think you'll need to give me permission to share my screen.
Yep, just did.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm back in my office now and getting used to my controls. So can everyone see the slides okay? Yes, all right, good. So let's see. So I mentioned I gave a version of this to our board back in June. So I'll give an update here and then welcome any questions or comments. So this first slide hopefully looks familiar to all of you. This is just a high-level summary of the 13 strategies that are in the mobilization strategy. And I'm not going to go through these in detail, but certainly if you have questions, I welcome those at the end of the presentation. So one of the things that we presented to our board on the 14th of June was an update on the strategies that the board had prioritized for us to focus on in the near term, so 12 to 18 months. And part of the discussion at the board meeting was a recommendation from staff based on feedback that we received from our member jurisdictions and partners to add the first objective, the all electric buildings campaign, to our list of priority objectives. So that has been, the board did approve of that being added. And so you'll see that we now have that here, along with the transportation strategies that were prioritized, carbon sequestration, and the equity and community engagement. So we have quite a healthy list of objectives and strategies to work on as a staff. And so I'll give you just a brief update now on where we're at with some of these strategies. And the reason you don't see anything on building energy is because that was just added to our list, and BC CAPS, who is our climate change program analyst, is on vacation. And so he is working on plans for that, but we didn't have an update for you today. So you can expect to hear more on that at our next CAAC meeting. So in terms of the transportation efforts over the last number of weeks, we have been working, and actually this is really something that's led by SCTA, which is the Future of Transit ad hoc of our board, has been working with the local transit operators on really looking at ways to improve the local transit service here in Sonoma County. And so they've been doing some work around looking at unifying the brand of transit in the county and ways to better integrate service planning and marketing so that it's easier to use the system. And so they've done some great planning work on that, and now they're looking for funding to really support the implementation of their recommendations. But I believe there'll be an update on that work at our board meeting on Monday. And the RCPA staff was involved in the bike electric program with Sonoma Clean Power, providing support to that. We've been in conversation with a group out of Stanford University that is doing work, a study on how to decommission our gas-powered vehicles. So they're thinking that it's not just enough to get people to move to EVs, but we need to make sure that we are equitably retiring all of the gas-powered vehicles that are left behind, and that they're not just being redeployed to other parts of the community. And so they're actually working to do some additional community engagement here in Sonoma County, I believe later this summer and fall. And so we do plan to partner with them on that outreach to really get a better understanding of the transportation needs in various parts of our community, as well as more equitable solutions to increasing the number of EVs out in the community. We've also done work on EV charger siting and various community requests for more information on fleet electrification. Have been working with our colleagues in SCTA on the comprehensive transportation plan, and that will also be on our board's agenda on Monday to give a presentation of the draft plan. And that, of course, has a number of strategies that directly impact and relate to greenhouse gas emission reduction. And then finally, we did initial research, and this was kudos to BC. He did some initial research on the topic of local gas station land use bans based on direction from our board at our June meeting, and has put together a staff report that I will be presenting to our board on Monday. So a lot happening at our board meeting this Monday. Then in terms of carbon sequestration, so the one objective that was prioritized is to support our local ag producers to basically implement and scale carbon sequestration. And we've been working with a number of partners, really led by the resource conservation districts, on a grant application to the Department of Conservation Sustainable Ag Lands Conservation Planning, which is quite a mouthful, but we have submitted a pre-proposal that would essentially provide funding for the development of a more detailed implementation plan for the sequestration portion of the mobilization strategy, as well as other funding to support carbon farm plans and encouraging and supporting more sequestration work in Sonoma County. So the pre-proposal went in. We are expecting to get feedback on that and then prepare a final grant application that's due in September. So really looking forward to getting some funding into Sonoma County to support sequestration. And then in terms of equity and community engagement, most of our focus has been around our annual process of working with our board of directors to add new members to the CAAC, and we can see the great results of that here today with all of our new members. We made some updates to the charter, which you received in your briefing book that Drew sent out. And then we also created one of the last things that Brant did for us before he took off for Sonoma Clean Power was to put together a mobilization strategy summary booklet that's a little easier to read than our full strategy. And so I've included the link in the slides if you haven't seen that. And we will also make sure to send these slides out to you after the meeting. So this is just a high-level timeline of our kind of the 3 months starting with July that we're in now, and some of the areas that staff will be focusing on. So I will be working on a kind of an update to our EV charging work, looking back at our Shift Sonoma County Low Carbon Transportation Action Plan, updating that, looking at where we stand relative to the actions that were identified in that plan, and then putting together a strategy going forward and plan to bring that to our board for a presentation and discussion at its September meeting. I mentioned BC, who's on vacation right now, but he is going to be working on kind of our next steps around building decarbonization. One of the things that we're looking at related to that and really learning from and building off work that's been done in Berkeley is to look at doing a more comprehensive inventory of our existing building stock and trying to figure out, how do we tackle this giant challenge of electrifying and improving energy efficiency on our existing building stock. So we'll be working on a work plan for that. We intend to partner, as I said, with the Stanford group on a workshop in our frontline communities around low carbon transportation needs, tentatively planned for later this summer or September. And then our Future of Transit work is looking at phase 2 of their unified branding strategy as soon as they have funding for that. I mentioned the grant proposal for carbon sequestration. I think it was Tom who mentioned the Urban Land Institute Resilience Advisory Services panel report, which we are expecting to come out in later this summer. And as soon as that's available, we will definitely schedule a presentation to our board and also share that with all of you. And then around equity, we have our first meeting with our new members today. And then staff will be doing some research around equity impact assessment and tools research as part of that strategy. And then just to note that on an ongoing basis, RCPA will continue providing program management and coordination with our members and partners. And then last slide, just in terms of kind of upcoming meetings that you may be have an interest in, I'm actually joining the North Bay Electric Auto Association tomorrow morning to give a presentation on the mobilization strategy with a focus on electric vehicles, and really look forward to getting that group's input and comments on our strategy. I mentioned our board meeting on Monday, where there will be a presentation on the final draft comprehensive transportation plan. Our board will be considering the appointment of a funding for climate ad hoc, which is very exciting, really a subset of our board to focus in on ways that we can, or options that we can pursue to increase funding for climate work in Sonoma County. So that discussion will take place Monday. And then finally, the staff report that I mentioned that will be about supporting local action to ban new gas stations and transition to EVs. And part of that staff report is really getting our board's feedback on the RCPA putting forward a resolution that would support these bans of new gas station land uses, and what role we can play in supporting our local jurisdictions to take similar action to what the city of Petaluma has already done. And then lastly, I think maybe Ty or Marilyn mentioned that we have been invited to present to the Healdsburg City Council, and that will be taking place on August 2nd. So we'll be presenting on the mobilization strategy and looking forward to hearing the discussion and feedback there. So with that, I will stop and turn it back over to the committee and ask if anyone has questions or feedback. I know that was a lot of information to share. So let's see, Jake. I think you're on mute.
Apologies.
That's okay.
Very interested in this funding ad hoc committee, and should we, in our role as advisors, be making comments through you, or how is this mechanism going to work? One of the huge gaps in the founding legislation that led to the creation of RCPA was the fact that there was neither enforcement authority nor funding authority as part of that legislation. It was left up to the jurisdictions. how much they would consider contributing to keep the organization alive. Tanya is well aware of this, and I suspect most of you all are. So I feel very strongly that there should be an effort to revisit the legislation that created RCPA to include some mechanism to properly fund this very important body.
All right, thank you, Jake. So I would recommend, Jake, and maybe Drew, you can help here in terms of kind of our protocol. I think we could certainly document that as a public comment for Monday, or what would you advise, Drew, in terms of our process? Or encourage Jake to just submit that as a comment on Monday?
I think that's what I'm leaning toward.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Jake, you have follow-up comment?
I got the message.
Great, thank you. All right, any other comments, Jake? Your hand is still raised, so I want to make sure I don't move on.
Well, I'll take my hand down.
All right, you can always put it back up. All right, so I didn't note whose hand came up first, so I'm just going to go down my list here, and I see Pete. So I apologize if I'm taking folks out of order, but Pete, floor is yours.
Right. I just wanted to make a comment about one of the items that you mentioned, Tanya, and I'm just mentioning this for the benefit of all the other CAAC members. I think it was last week I had a chance to at least skim through the just released draft of the Sonoma County Comprehensive Transportation Plan, and I am struck by an appalling lack of vision. The goals are full of language like high quality bike and pedestrian network and bold steps to achieve zero emission transportation network, but I don't see much evidence of a concerted effort to move us away from the auto-centric model that has been guiding us, and moving instead toward an active transportation system. The plan predicts by 2050 increased traffic congestion and delay, no improvement to traffic safety, no reduction in collision rates, and a reduction in VMT per capita of 1 mile per person. So in my quick reading of it, I find the comprehensive transportation plan utterly lacking, utterly deficient. And I just urge everybody else on this body to have a look at it and make your views known to the full board on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Zaino. When you're still on mute.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Yeah, so it strikes me that the whole issue of charging is really a big puzzle for equity. Right now, when you charge or when you fuel up, it's very democratic. I mean, there may be a few people that have chauffeurs that don't go and get their own gas, but most people in the population have to stand in line, and if there's a line, and they have access to gas. This is going to dramatically change with electric vehicles, because many of us on this call probably will have like home charging, and you can do it overnight. And this is not going to be available for people that rent, for people that have apartment buildings. So they have to kind of hustle and bustle their recharging away from home, or share charging with people in their apartment building, that kind of thing. So I think there should be, I'm not sure how much of a focus is that for the plan, but for me, that is a key issue for moving forward to electric vehicles. It's not just providing charging options, but this angle of access, convenient access to charging that should be equitable distributed, independent of your wealth, is very important. So then the other question I had about workplace development, is there any addressing do we have the people to do all these things that we are starting to think about? Is there an explicit effort to work with the Economic Development Board, Santa Rosa Union College, the high school, Sonoma State, PG&E, to really map what we have available to do this work in the county? I mean, I find it personally very hard to find an electrician to do some work I like to be done on my own house. So workplace development is, I think, a workforce development should be something that we start immediately, because it takes a while for people to train themselves, to get trained, to develop interest, to deepen their understanding, right? So this is not something we can postpone. This is something we need to do very immediately. Then a last thing that I would like to mention is that I think it's a good idea if we keep the quantitative targets in mind. So for example, the sequestration, we depend for sequestration in our plan. It's quite a heavy emphasis, right? Because we realize it's very hard to completely go to zero. So there is a need for sequestration in agriculture and forestry. But I like to see those initiatives quantify out. So what is our target for how much do we need to sequester? And what are these efforts that we're doing? What percentage of our target is met by these efforts? I think that's very important to get clarity and to always remind me of the urgency of expanding our efforts. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, Ty.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just have a couple of questions and comments about what's going to happen on August 2nd, based on some of the experiences that others have had when you've come to their town councils to present about the strategies. I'm assuming that this is an informational meeting, but obviously we have expectations, and this particular meeting in Healdsburg is going to be a very, very lively meeting because it's the first in-person meeting that the council has held. I'm assuming they're going to do a hybrid version, but there's also many members of the community are going to be out there, not necessarily because RCPA is coming, but because of a lot of the things that have taken place as a result of the 40% reductions because of the drought. And so my comment is that climate change is really starting to affect people very personally. And we're seeing that in Healdsburg. So what can we do as advisory committee members? What other things can we pressure our city council to do? For instance, if RCPA, and I don't know that this is going to happen immediately, but let's say that they do pass the countywide gas station ban. I'm assuming that that would be taken to the cities, and then they would be informed about those kinds of actions that they could potentially take. Healdsburg, in my opinion, has been very slow to implement its climate emergency resolution and has not done much substantial. So those are my questions to you and to other members of the group.
So just one comment, Ty. I haven't received any information for the August 2nd meeting other than the invitation to attend. So Suzanne, the director of, or the executive director of the SCT and RCPA, and I will be there together. And so we definitely will reach out to city staff as well as Director Kelly, who is our RCPA board member, to get more information in terms of how best to focus and tailor our presentation to meet the needs that the city is looking for. In terms of your role, certainly as a member of this committee, anything that you can do in working with your network within Healdsburg to share information about the mobilization strategy, encourage folks to attend, whether it's our meeting or your city council meeting, to really express support and input for the mobilization strategy. That would all be very much appreciated. And if you have any specific questions that you think we should be prepared to answer at the meeting, that would also be helpful in terms of feedback that you could certainly send directly to me, and that helps us in preparing for that meeting. So hopefully I addressed your questions, and certainly welcome additional feedback as we go forward.
So have other
yeah.
cities, when you've come, have
Yeah, and
they
actually,
endorsed the strategies? Do
you
they?
know, yeah, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. So I believe Healdsburg is actually the first city council that we presented to. We have presented to some of the climate action subcommittees of the cities, but we haven't actually presented on the mobilization strategy to a city council. Although, as I say that, I think I participated in a Rohnert Park City Council meeting, but more as someone there to answer questions and to support staff in that meeting. So we haven't been invited to other councils yet to do this kind of presentation. So Healdsburg is leading the way in that regard. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, you are next on my list.
I'm encouraged that we're going to start looking at the moratorium on gas stations expanding from Petaluma, and also the funding subcommittee. It's kind of finally happening, because I think we all are generally on the same page of what we wanted to do. The question is, how do we do it? How do we get the money to do it? And I think we're still hearing that sales tax is pretty much the only idea that I've seen written down. And I'm concerned, based on equity, that that's really not the way we really want to be going. I have no idea if it's at all legal, but Portland has kind of shown the way how to proceed. They have adopted local income taxes for the wealthy and using that for climate and housing and child care, all sorts of different things. That may not be legal in California, but we really need to find alternative funding sources that are not based on sales tax. Thank you.
All right, Carrie.
Well, I totally agree with Steve. And yeah, I think I just wanted to make a quick kind of process question, having been on this committee for the last 4 years and having heard kind of from the evaluation of the charter and the new round of appointments, a desire to diversify this committee, and per some of the comments that Zeno brought up too, I'm not seeing a ton of change. Everybody here is totally wonderful, and I'm curious if there's been any evaluation of that process, because a goal was set and an outcome has been had, and I'm curious, are there lessons being learned from that process in terms of I'm curious what barriers came up in the attempts to diversify this. Are there ways we can address that moving forward? And that might totally be happening. I just want to make sure I had heard that intention, and then I didn't hear any acknowledgement of if we had set a goal that if we had missed, it seemed like a little bit off the target a little bit, and what can we learn from that to do better next time? So that was, I understand it's really hard, but more just like a process question on that. And then love the comments about workforce development around EV vehicles, and a suggestion, and you're probably already in communication, but with the Lime Foundation, because they do auto training for workforce development. And so getting early in with them, and they're very innovative. Letitia Hankey is really open to climate friendly solutions and trainings, and they could be an awesome partner in that space for workforce development.
All right, thanks, Carrie. So in response to your question, we have not yet done an evaluation, but we definitely will be looking at the whole process. Our board didn't set any specific goals in terms of the composition of the committee, and they really wanted to keep the appointment process within their responsibility. So what staff tried to do is really support that process by having a more a broader outreach. So we had the new nomination form, and we did share that, and I'm sure there are ways that we can do that more effectively in the future, but definitely we'll be doing an evaluation. I know Drew has some thoughts about how to make the process work better next time around, but we're really delighted to have the appointees that we have here today, and we do still have a couple of vacancies that our directors are working to fill. So when that process completes, we definitely will do an evaluation, and welcome any thoughts or feedback from the committee. In fact, we might bring this back as an agenda topic for the future. I think that would probably be a good idea. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, Tom. Oh, and you're
Sorry,
muted. Yeah, there you go.
muted there.
That's okay.
I just wanted to underscore Jake's comments about the need for funding, and Steve as well. Supervisor Gorin has definitely asked for this committee to kind of help bring the community together in support of future funding methods. But the problem that Pete highlights about, for example, the inadequacy of our comprehensive transportation plan just kind of illustrates how difficult it's going to be if the community doesn't feel that this effort is either representative of itself, or that the money's not going to just go to propagating the status quo. It's going to be very difficult to get community to come together and to avoid the kinds of back and forth that has kept us from being fully unified in our vision of how to respond to the climate crisis. So I think we on this committee really need to focus on that and lean on those who are in the positions of authority, like the folks behind the comprehensive transportation plan. If we acknowledge that the process was really just soliciting the local agencies for their existing list of projects, we're not going to have a transformative transportation plan that meets our climate goals. So we really need to put effort there. The other point I'd like to make has to do with the prioritization of our in sequestration, running after the grant. While I recognize that's an important funding necessity, the scientific reality is that if we continue to transform our existing forests, if we lose forests in Sonoma County, we'll easily trump any sequestration benefits we can get on our croplands. And I'll include a link to the recently updated emissions inventory at the national level, which prioritizes the key categories and really shows how important it is to protect that existing carbon stock in our forests.
Thank you, Tom. So let's see, Steve, you are next on my list. Erla. And you are also on mute. There you go.
Thank you. I too am concerned about the fact that the comprehensive transportation plan that's going to be discussed over the next month or so doesn't square with the goals of the mobilization strategy. And I think that's largely because we haven't really done a careful job of looking at all the various options that cities have to shift from autos to bikes and so forth, slow street programs and so forth. So I hope that we can rev up that side of things and begin to come up with some concrete proposals for how to reduce vehicle miles traveled at the rate that's necessary in order to meet our goals.
All right, thank you, Steve. Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Tanya. So this comment or question has to do with coordination and implementation of our mobilization strategy. I was glad to hear that the Sonoma County Climate Analyst is on the call. The FOCAP, the Friends of the Climate Action Plan, met yesterday, and we realized in that meeting that we really don't have any update at all on this position that the county is looking at for a climate lead and an assistant to that person. So I know that this person's job description is going to involve coordination between all of the major climate efforts going on in the county. But is there any update at all on where that position stands right now? And has the RCPA been gearing up for any kind of interface with this person in a formal way so that when they are on board, that relationship can get off to a good start?
So I can give an update, and then Anna, if you have any updates, certainly welcome yours as well. We are definitely looking forward to the county finishing its hiring process. And I believe, I'm not sure if the recruitment the due date for the applications has come up yet. So the county is actively recruiting for that position. And I believe we'll be screening applications and scheduling interviews in the near future. I don't know the exact dates for that, but that is definitely in process. And absolutely the RCPA will be working very closely, as we do with all of our members and partners, on climate coordination. And we really still see that as one of RCPA's main roles, is to be coordinating work across our member jurisdictions and partners. And so certainly we'll be working very closely with the county as well, because we need all the resources we can get working on climate issues. And so we're really excited to have a full team at the county as well. And it's great having Anna on board already. And definitely we've already had one meeting, and I'm sure we'll be working together very closely. So thank you for asking the question. Anna, anything else that you would want to add from your perspective?
Yeah, and I can add a little bit more specificity to the hiring process. So the recruitment has not closed yet. So if you know of anyone who would be an excellent director and also boss for me, please encourage them to apply, because we are still, that hasn't closed yet. In our timeline right now, it's obviously not set in stone because we don't know who we're hiring, but we're hoping to have that person onboarded sometime in September. So anyways, and then the hiring of the principal analyst, that will be kind of their second-hand person, will begin, the process for hiring will begin after we've onboarded the director. So that hiring process has not started yet. We are ready to do so, but the process that the CAO's office wanted to go through was to hire the director first and then the principal analyst, so that they can help onboard a person that they wanted. And then, yeah, and I will say too, this is my, I think it's either my third or fourth week in the office, so I'm still very much establishing relationships with people, and would love to chat with any of you all in your roles that you hold individually about how I can best support you all from the county's perspective, or in my role. And it's definitely something too that is on kind of our radar for this new climate division, is to kind of assist the RCPA in kind of acting as, and we definitely see ourselves as the hub for county operations, because there's a lot of things going on across the county in all different divisions. So we're hoping to kind of help that funneling process.
All right, thank you. So I don't see any other committee member hands.
Do we have a phone number, by the way, Anna, that you're willing to share with us since you made the offer?
Of course, I will drop my contact info in the chat right now.
Great, thank you. All right, so I think
Thanks so much.
Now open it up to any public comment. So if any member of the public would like to make comments on this item, please feel free to raise your hand. I know that we are running close to the end of our time, but very important to hear any additional feedback from the rest of the attendees here. All right, so I'm not seeing any hands raised in the chat, and if you are waving at me on the screen, I'm not seeing you, so it's best to raise your hand in the chat or in the participant list. All right, so I think with that, I don't see any hands. I will move us on to our next agenda item, which is the, find my agenda here, a community-wide climate action coordination, which has kind of come up in our comments a little bit to date. And so I'll keep this relatively brief. I just wanted to give everyone an update. For those who have been on the committee for at least the last couple of meetings, we have had prior discussions about the need to coordinate climate action countywide and what kinds of resources in terms of information or sharing might be helpful in that regard. And so I want to let the group know that BC on our team has done some research on various options for creating a more comprehensive inventory, if you will, of groups that are working on climate issues, projects, programs, et cetera. And as you can imagine, that's a fairly large undertaking. So we put together kind of a straw proposal to take a look at internally. And we also got some feedback from members of this committee in terms of what would be most useful. And I think in this kind of process, it's very important to think about what our purpose is and why we would want such a resource. So we're still kind of thinking through that and welcome your feedback. But based upon the research that we've done so far, we actually identified an effort that's being led out of Drawdown Bay Area, which is the Bay Area Climate Action Mapping Project. And they have created an online tool that's actually in some ways reflects what we were already thinking we might want to do here in Sonoma County. And so we're really looking to that group to see if we can leverage the efforts that are underway there, perhaps feeding some of our information into that initiative so that their view of Sonoma County is more complete. And I'll put the link to that, website and the information in the chat. And then I also wanted to mention that kind of closer to home, one of the tools that we are developing within the RCPA is a kind of a climate action tracking tool. And I want to just share a kind of a draft prototype with you. This is something that we envision at some point in the near future, hopefully in the early fall, being able to share on our website so that anyone can get a kind of a bird's eye view of what's happening related to climate in the county. So if I can find my file here. And again, this is very much a work in progress, but I just wanted to give you a sense for the kind of information that we are looking to track really in support of our role of coordinating climate action across the county. And I want to give credit to BC, who's really done a lot of the legwork in terms of putting this initial template together. So we envision keeping track of information about each jurisdiction. You can see some of the data points that we'd like to track and make really easily accessible to not only ourselves, but all of you and members of the public. So looking at, what subcommittees might exist in each of the cities that are focused on climate. Are there equity initiatives that are underway? And again, this is not a complete list, so we're not ready to share it because we haven't filled in all of the columns, and we definitely want to get input from our local contacts in each city and the county. But you can see for each of the strategies in the mobilization strategy, we want to be able to identify, what's happening in each of the cities if they're actively working on that. So we, have, for example, put a placeholder here for Petaluma that has already taken action on the gas station bans, electric reach code, et cetera. So this is just an example or a draft of what we're looking to put together and really maintain over time. And again, make available when it's more complete on our website for other folks to be able to see. So with that, I actually had a couple of questions for the CAAC to consider in your comments. And one is, how can the RCPA more effectively get the word out about our mobilization strategy? I have gotten feedback that not many people know about it. So welcome the committee's feedback on how we can do more communication around that. And then also just put a kind of a placeholder out there for you to think about in terms of, if you know of opportunities for us to present on the mobilization strategy to community groups, business groups. And we did kind of an early round of presentations to some of the business organizations like the chambers and other groups, Farm Bureau, et cetera. But, if you have some inputs or connections for us, we would welcome that. And then finally, to think about how staff, Drew and BC and I can best support all of you in providing you the tools and the information that you need to really be effective in sharing the mobilization strategy and the work of the committee and the RCPA with the general public. So I will stop there and welcome any comments or questions from the group. And please just raise your hand in the list if you have any comments. Yes, Tom.
Thank you. I heard, I think it was Carrie mentioned the Latino Climate Leaders Group, and I think that sounds like a really positive possible development for expansion of this committee. That's all I have to say.
Great. And I have been participating in that group. They've taken a break over the summer, but I think their next meeting is on sometime in August. And I know they welcome other attendees as well. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please let me know. And I think Carrie probably would have more information on that as well. Pete.
Tanya, I just wanted to say really quickly that that spreadsheet that you just showed that BC is working on looks very promising. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. All right, any other comments? Yes, Julie. Oh, it looks like, there you go.
There you go. Thank you so much. I just wanted to kind of circle back to the very, very beginning with the comment made that we are in a climate crisis and we need to really push our language, obviously to be very positive, but to remind folks that this is an emergency and we can't have, meeting after meeting after meeting after strategy, not just us, but in our whole area, in our county, in our cities. We need to keep taking actionable steps forward in order to reach this goal. So I think if we can help remind everyone of that, I think that would be a really positive way to start getting some action.
Thank you, Julie. Great reminder. Carrie.
I have a ask of the group, a need that this group of very wise folks in the space that I'm humbled to be a part of, but I am looking for resources that help kind of really ground this into the individual scale of like the collective picture of what can it look like to be climate resilient, both from like an emergency preparedness perspective, as well as from a behavior change to be a part of the solution. And I have found different resources from Long Beach that I wanted to put them both in the chat, but I really appreciated their framing of like very simple, accessible language and very good laying out of key concepts. And it got to the behavior change we want, but how it approached it felt very accessible, which is what I've been challenged in doing in some of my program development, is making this just help people understand like how this will impact them and their grandma, and kind of really bring it to the personal level. So I'm looking for something that has kind of a combination of this like personal action guide that I'm putting in the chat. I think I just did that once. And then something around like emergency preparedness that Nuestra Comunidad does. But one is very much like an emergency preparedness, and one is kind of like how to be more climate resilient in the face of increasing floods and heat waves and disasters, while not just contribute, buying all the things. So that's a request out. And thank you, Tanya, for the links.
Absolutely. Yeah. And perhaps a topic for a future CAAC meeting for more conversation for sure. All right, Julie.
Just to kind of piggyback on Julie and Carrie's comment just now, and you mentioned earlier, Tanya, about Drawdown, and Drawdown was one of the first organizations that I went to and discovered, and they have great educational materials, and they were actually sort of my baseline inspiration for wanting to migrate from healthcare to climate solutions. And they're very holistic, just like our mobilization strategy has different components. Somebody mentioned, addressing the priorities. I think Tom's comment in the chat was really about how do we make sure that what our actions are have the most impact. I mean, and it's not just politically driven or convenience driven, but actually is somewhere we can make the most impact. And I think that lends to the urgency that some other members have expressed today. And Drawdown does do that. They calculated out, which, I didn't get into the methodology. I'm not the biggest statistician, to be honest with you, but I was like, okay, if I'm a believer, they already have prioritized where you get the most impact on greenhouse gases. So it was just very fascinating to me. Not all of it is, layman's accessible to the layman, but I found it to be very digestible. And so I would encourage like their videos, like if we can promote, and I don't know if that's permissible. I mean, of course we want to promote our own work, but I also think just educating the community and motivating people on individual actions like food waste, like is something that we can all address as food waste. And I'm a guilty partner of like probably wasting way too much food. So, it was an individual action that I personally adopted as one of my one of my things that I wanted to do as a practice. So I think those kind of things are great. So I just wanted to make a plug for Drawdown again, and just sort of using some very simple educational community tools to promote our mission.
Great, thank you, Julie. All right, Steve. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to recognize that Sonoma County and California can be examples for the world. And California very early stepped out to recognize that even though our contribution as a state to greenhouse gas emissions is a small percentage, once we began to show what we could do to reduce emissions from vehicles and so forth, other states began to copy us. The federal government began to pick it up. And then it gets to the Climate Paris Accord, or the Paris Climate Accord. And so I think we need to keep in mind that we want to be examples. And California has retreated a little bit from its leadership role. Hopefully, as a county, we can begin to stiffen the state on this issue quite soon.
All right, thank you, Steve. Any other comments on this item? I know that we're running close, actually almost to the end of our time, and I don't want to keep you all beyond our end time. But if there are any last comments from the committee, and also would ask if there are any members of the public who would like to make a brief comment for the committee on this topic. Steve, your hand is still up, but I assume, do you have anything else you wanted to share? No? Okay, all right. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So let me just very briefly, the last item on our, well, we have two items actually, the RCPA update on activities. And I think Steve actually mentioned the one thing that I was going to share with the committee, which is the huge success, initial success of the Water Upgrade Save program in Sebastopol. And I had a slide that I was going to share with you, which is a dashboard of the program stats to date. So what I think I'll do is have that included in the minutes from the meeting so that you can take a look at that. And it's probably something that I think will be posted more visibly in the future, but we'll definitely share that with you. And then I think that was really the main thing I wanted to share, along with, actually, we are still recruiting for a community affairs specialist, so the replacement for Brandt. Although of course there's no replacing Brandt, but the position that he was in, which supports both the RCPA and the SCTA, and that is posted on our website. And then we're also recruiting more on the SCTA side for an assistant director of projects and programs, and that position is also posted. So if you know of good folks for either of those positions, I'd appreciate your help spreading the word. And so the last item on our agenda before we adjourn is announcements. Does anyone have a brief announcement? And I see that Jerry has his hand up. Jerry, would you like to make a brief public comment?
Yeah, thank you. I just like to reiterate an issue that I've been working on for a long time, as some of you know, and it's the issue that Greta Thunberg addressed in her recent statement that Tom referred to, which is tracking aviation emissions beyond jurisdictional boundaries. And just to ask you to consider whether this tourist economy that we're living in is really sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. All right, any last announcements from the group before we adjourn for the day? So one quick announcement that I will make is that one of the things I'd like to add to future agendas is just a placeholder to hear from the committee any future agenda topics that you'd like to see added to the agenda. So in the absence of having that, we can't speak about that today, but I would ask if you have inputs, please feel free to email them to either me or Drew, and we'll definitely take that into consideration as we form future agendas. But we'll put that as a more formal part of our next meeting agenda. So with that, I think we can call the meeting adjourned right on time. Thank you all so very much for being here and for your commitment to climate work, and really look forward to working with all of you to move the mobilization strategy forward in Sonoma County.
Good to be back. Bye.
Yep.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good job.
Thanks, guys.